How America lost her greatness. Well, somebody's going to turn me up just a little, so I'm not going to holler too much. How America lost her greatness. My picture today is of a brain in a cage. So we might say how America lost her brain. Well, we can see plainly from our text today how this happened. Let's read together Psalms 9, verse 17. Let's go. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. Do you reckon America could be part of one of these nations? I believe so. You may be seated. Dear Father, do help us understand that every nation that forgets you will be turned into hell, will be pointed in that direction, will fall into hell, will have their country destroyed. And that's just in this life. I thank you for everybody that's gathered in church today, Lord. Now we do pray in a special, holy way that you'd meet with us and that you give us exactly what we need, Lord. And may we be filled with your Spirit to holiness and godliness and repentance where needed. In Jesus' name, amen. You know, in light of recent Veterans Day and the recent midterm elections, I want to show how America lost her greatness. I don't want to look at just external issues. I want to look at foundational issues. Really, you could call this the destruction, the assault on family, church, and nation. I want to show how this assault occurred and how America lost her greatness. And we can see then how we can get it back. Do not ever forget how important foundational issues are. It says in Psalms 11, "For lo, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow upon the string, that they may privily shoot at the upright in heart." The wicked are always going to attack those that are standing for God. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Do not allow the foundations to be destroyed. Family's foundational from the beginning. Don't allow family to be redefined. Don't allow male and female to be redefined, where they have no definition anymore. Don't allow what God said about the family to be redefined. But let's go back. The Bible says the church is the pillar and ground of the truth. Don't allow the devil to destroy the church. But I'm going to tell you, if he destroys the family, if he begins to attack the church and begin to change churches, the nation has no chance. The nation has no chance. I'm going to make a very urgent Christian point today. Instead of using an illustration from a personal story or some other story, I'm going to use an illustration just from modern politics. And I'm going to show you what is happening at the very foundations by means of this illustration, okay? In this illustration, you're going to see who they think the real enemy is and the real danger. Really, you can just go to the past 100 years, this past century, and you can see the destruction of the country. You could start back in the 19th century, where I wrote a book about, it's the Word, God Will Keep It, where I showed the history of the King James Bible only movement. Now here's what happened. I want you to understand this. God put the Bible in English. He used Tyndale, a Baptist, to do it. They killed Tyndale at the stake, burned him to death. His dying prayers, he was choked to death after he put the Bible in English, was God open the King of England's eyes. Then there came a king, King James. God opened his eyes and he put the Bible. He wanted to take every English translation and perfect them. And the King James translators came and said, we're just finishing what Tyndale started. We're putting the finishing touches on what he started when they killed him. Now that Bible, I tell you what, it went into all the world and it became the Baptist Bible. Baptists were persecuted everywhere. But they came to America and they had that King James Bible. And they began to teach people the Bill of Rights. They began to teach people that you ought to have freedom of religion and freedom of speech. People never heard anything like that before. The Catholic Church hated it. They whipped the Baptists. They beat the Baptists. They jailed the Baptists. And they kept standing for that King James Bible. They were called shouting Baptists. And they said, I got to teach you that you ought not be punishing and persecuting people. You need a Bill of Rights. The Revolutionary War took off. And then what happened is George Washington, an American historian, said, it is from the Baptists that we have the First Amendment. It is from these fundamental Baptists that taught us freedom of religion, the Bill of Rights. It is the trophy of the Baptists, says Bancroft, an American historian in the 19th century. Now something's going on right here now. That King James Bible built this country. What do you think's going to happen when you get away from that book? There goes your country. I tell you what, you want to bless this country? Just get out of the way of fundamental Baptists. Exalt that King James Bible and just get out of the way of fundamental Baptists. Don't hinder them. Don't pass laws. Just get out of their way. And I'm going to tell you, that's how this country was built. Good church-going people, standing with a King James Bible, praying to God, loving the Lord, and that's what made America great. Now, you can imagine what's going to happen if you try to undermine. In the 1800s, 1880 or so, they began to say, you know what? Let's just get rid of that King James Bible. And then by the time you get to the 1900s, there's lots of excitement. Wow, you've got, the century is changing. We've got technology. We've got advancement. Things are looking good. We're going to get better and better and better and have world peace. Then all of a sudden the First World War came, 1914. That popped the balloon. A few years later you had a worldwide pandemic, the Spanish flu. 1918 and 1919 killed 50 million people, infected a third of the world's population. Many children lost one or both their parents. February 6, 1918 in the United Kingdom, most women over 30 got the right to vote. That never happened before. Why did they say over 30? 1918 became the end of the First World War. Now just think about these things I'm going to tell you right here now. I want you to think about them. Because things are replaying right now. In 1919, the United States approves the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote. Do you know what's strange about that? Is if you go back and read the history, the majority of women in America did not want that. Even the wives of congressmen, they didn't want it. They said, what are you doing? What are you doing to America? Now, you might not like that. I'm just giving you historical facts. Most women did not want the right to vote. You say, well, how did they get it? Well, the same way they got it in England. a bunch of women went crazy, and anywhere they would have Congress, they would scream, and you'd have to drag them out, and they were screaming and screaming and hollering, and a lot of men said, you know what, just forget it. Give them the right to vote before they quit screaming. We want to see, if you go scream anywhere, you can almost get anything you want in this country. Just throw a big enough fit. Race riots broke out everywhere in 1919. Now let's fast forward a little bit. 1922. That's 100 years ago, isn't it? President of the United States introduces the first radio in the White House. That was amazing. June 14th, he makes his first speech on the radio for all the nation to hear. That had never happened before. It had to be repeated, printed in newspapers. But now the whole world's listening to this speech, or at least all of America. Now, a few years later, in 1925, the state of Tennessee versus John Thomas Scopes, commonly referred to as the Scopes monkey trial. It lasted for about 10 or 11 days in 1925. The trial was deliberately staged. And you're going to learn something here, or you're going to be reminded of something, and you're going to see exactly what is happening today. And never, ever, ever forget it. National reporters raced down to Dayton, Tennessee. I've been there. I've taken pictures in the little courthouse and walked in it. Nobody was there. Just sat there with my kids, and we just sat there and prayed. Just looking around this little courthouse. See, William Jennings Bryan was a 3-time presidential candidate. And they chose him to argue for the prosecution. Clarence Darrow was a defense attorney for this teacher named Scopes. Now what happened is he was supposedly teaching evolution. But Tennessee had passed a law, you're not going to teach that monkey junk in our state to these kids. So the ACLU, good old ACLU, said, oh no, we've got to stop this. So we're going to stage this kind of setup. Now, what had been going on for years, Charles Spurgeon warned about it in the late 1800s. It had been rising and rising and rising, was a fundamentalist, modernist controversy. But guess what? The fundamentalists were winning. Before you get to the 1920s, every president, every mayor says, I'm a fundamentalist. Isn't that strange? They would go to the mayor, they'd go to the governor and says, well, what do you think about the fundamentalist, evolution, modernist controversy? They said, I'm not no monkey man. I'm not no unbeliever. I'm a fundamentalist. You had to say you were a fundamentalist to get elected. The president had to say he was a fundamentalist to get elected. I don't mean he had to say he's a Christian. He had to say he was a fundamentalist. So now they're setting up this trial. Darrow, who is defending this teacher, went out and got a man named Charles Francis Potter. He wrote a book called Contradictions of the Bible. I believe the Harry Potter novel is based off of him. At 11 years old, he realized, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in God. I'm a humanist. I believe man is God. He started the first humanist church in America, and he put a big old giant ape as a statue when you walk in. It says, this is your God, worship him. Darrow said, man, you got to help me come up with some contradictions in the Bible that you think are there. Charles Potter, he went up and sat under a tree, and he says, I'll get it covered for you. You just wait. I'm going to write up a whole bunch of stuff to make these Christians look stupid. Now, This was the first United States trial to be broadcast on national radio for all of America to hear. On the seventh day of the trial, a strange thing happened. The defense asked the judge to call the lawyer, Brian, as a witness so they could question him on the Bible. He says, I've never claimed to be an expert on the Bible. And then Darrow started laughing at him, and everybody started laughing and said, yeah, because you can't answer the questions we have for you. He says, well, any Christian can answer these things. They didn't know that he had a professional, agnostic, unbeliever, humanist write up everything that he could think of, see. So this was a setup. Brian accepted. But he said it's only going to be on one condition. I, as the lawyer, when you get done cross-examining me on national radio, you get your behind up here, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm going to cross-examine you in front of all of America. So he got up there, and the area of questioning involved the book of Genesis, things like that. Whether Eve was actually created from Adam's rib, where Cain got his wife, anything they could try to do to try to make a fundamental Christian look naive, uneducated. Meanwhile, the media, much of it, is going down and interviewing every mountain person they could find in Tennessee and trying to make them look foolish and uneducated. So Darrow began to say, the Bible can't be scientific. You can't use the Bible to teach science. And he said, you are insulting every man of science in the whole world. He said, we have the purpose of preventing bigots and ignoramuses from controlling the education of the United States. Darrow then closed the case without a final summation. And under Tennessee law, when the defense waived its right for a closing speech, the prosecution was barred from summing up its case. And there was no way that Darrow ever got to be cross-examined by William Jennings Bryan. Which means they put this man who never called himself a Bible scholar, they put him on the stand, interviewed him before all of America on this thing called the radio. And when it became time to cross-examine the other side and make them look stupid as they really are, they said, that's okay, we throw the trial. William Jennings Bryan realized he'd been tricked, that none of this was about the trial. This was a propaganda machine using radio in front of every American, glued to the radio, listening to this trial. It was to make Christians look backwards, stupid, uneducated, and ridiculous. A few years later, Charles Potter in 1930 came out with his book, Humanism, A New Religion. Remember, he's the one that wrote these questions for Darrow to ask William Jennings Bryan. What did Charles Potter write in his book, A New Religion? He said, we got a new religion. It's called humanism. Get used to it. He said, you Christians are so stupid. You use these Baptists to get rid of the state church and give you freedom, and then you set up a state church of humanism called the public schoolhouse, not realizing that humanists control public education. So now you have a state church of humanism. It's the humanist church, and it's the school down the road. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. That's 1930, folks. That's not 1960. That's not 1970. Then Charles Potter said, another reason you Christians are so stupid is not only did you set up a humanist church, but you think evolution's the only thing that are in those textbooks that's the religion of humanism. You're so blind you don't even see yet what we've planted in those textbooks. And then he said these words, so to speak, in effect. What will you be able to do? In one generation, we have your kids 5 days a week for all these hours every day. You have them for a few hours for Sunday school 1 day a week. In one generation, you will not be able to have church in America unless that church compromises and teaches the humanist religion mixed with the Bible. You know that's what happened? Do you know it was not till about 40 or 50 years later that Christians finally said, you know what? I think something's wrong with these public schools. I think maybe we better get our kids out of there. And the homeschooling movement began. That's 50 years after they were already bragging that they're destroying this country. They're bringing in humanism. It's the downfall of the country. This is 15 years after the fact. Propaganda was perfected in the 1920s and really before that. At the time, there was a push by Rockefeller Foundation for a one-world government, way back then. But something was in the way. You'll never guess what was in the way. Fundamental Christianity. They said fundamentalism is in our way of a one-world government. That's what they said. They said the U.S. Constitution, Bill of Rights, we'll get rid of all of that once we get rid of fundamental Christianity. Manly P. Hall, the occultist, the Satanist, said we've been working to get rid of the King James Bible. We're using public education and psychology to try to get people weaned off the King James Bible, but we're not very successful. Before the Scopes trial, the fundamentalists were winning. After the Scopes trial, the governors began to be embarrassed to say they're a fundamentalist. You're in the roaring 20s. People began to say, I'm a Christian. I'm just not one of those Bible believers that take it literally, you know. People started backing up. They said, man, we need something else. So something called New Evangelicalism arose. Said, well, we're educated Christians. We believe in modern science and mixing science with the Bible. We're the new evangelicals, you know. We're not like these radical fundamental Baptists, you know. People with money that are one-worlders began to fund people from the inside. Put them on the front page of every paper. Pretend they're fundamentalists, but they weren't fundamentalists. The reason they were there is to lead people further and further and further away from fundamentalism. So let's get to the point. What was it that destroyed this country? Well, you could say evolution's the root of all isms, but how would evolution ever be propagated to America if it wasn't for public education, state-funded? See, you say, well, I had a teacher and she was pretty good. You know, we prayed before. Hey, I went to school. In my day and age, I went to school. The principal came over the loudspeaker and prayed in Jesus' name every single day. You mess up, the teacher will whip you. And if you backtalk her, she sends you over to a man with a big old giant stick. And he'll beat you till you cry. That's how I went to school. But don't you think it wasn't full of humanism? Don't you think it wasn't full of humanism? I'm going to tell you what destroyed this country was propaganda that says if you believe the Bible, you are backwoods, uneducated. And by the way, anybody from the country began to be ridiculed in cartoons and movies, and people would fund, where the Bible is, wherever the Bible's taken literally, we need to make them look stupid, Beverly Hillbillies, Deliverance, all that kind of stuff. Make them look idiotic. So what happened is this ridicule, this scorn, this propaganda scared people. It scared them to death away from fundamental Christianity. And it worked. It worked. The more they use the media to mock fundamental Christianity, the more Christians who want to be loved by the world and want to be cool and all of those other words, the more they said, oh, well, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm just not one of the, I'm one of these, I don't believe in organized religion, I'm not one of these literalists. I'm not one of these Baptists, you know what I mean? I'm one of those cool Christians. I'm a cool Christian. The Bible says, and many shall follow their pernicious, destructive ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. The Lord said this is going to happen. They're going to mock the truth. Having a good conscience, that whereas they speak evil of you as of evildoers, that they may be ashamed that falsely accuse your good conversation in Christ. The Bible says, live holy, but they're going to speak evil of you. Paul says, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers. Now listen. This is what happened in the Bible. This is what the Bible warns is going to happen. That if you want to stand for Christ, they're going to mock you, scorn you, falsely accuse you, ridicule you. And you just got to say, I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of your mockery. I'm not ashamed. You can get up here and mock anybody you want. Mock us. But what they'll never do is allow you to present your case publicly. They want to mock you and use the media, use everything they can to mock you. But when you stand up and say, okay, my turn, they say, oh no, oh no. I didn't even go to college, but I marched down to UTA and looked at a teacher right in his eyes and says, man, I heard you've been mocking Christianity in your class every single day. And I said, I'm here to be impressed. I'm here for you to impress me. I can't wait to hear your worldview of how life came from a rock. And then one day this rock, just sitting around here for millions of years, decided it has consciousness. So I can't wait to hear about your talking, thinking rock that came from vegetable soup. I can't wait to hear it, man. Entertain me now. Impress me. You never heard anybody start stuttering. Oh, he could stand up in front of his class, his college class. He could stand up there and mock Christianity every single day in architecture. But when asked to present his view in confrontation, he had nothing to say. So let's fast forward to where we're at today. Let's now use our illustration of modern politics and show you something that's happening, okay? And you should guess what it is. You should already know now. George W. Bush, boy, he was a faker, wasn't he? And Barack Obama, it's good that they're together because they belong together, don't they? George Bush and Barack Obama will hold back-to-back disinformation conferences following Trump's big announcement on Tuesday. See, the new thing now is misinformation and disinformation. We must ban and censor all disinformation. Who decides what's disinformation? What if somebody gets in control and they have most of the media machine, and they get to decide what's disinformation. Here's a headline. Election results show it's time for Republicans to leave the cult of Trump behind. Uh-oh. Now you're a cult. That's a scary word, isn't it? We're not man worshipers. We don't trust in princes. Absolutely. We're thankful for anybody with some backbone that God raises up. And we pray for leaders who have some backbone that won't compromise. And we pray they won't compromise. And if there's crazy people out here that worship man, then rebuke them. But there's more than just dealing with a few crazy people that worship men. This is propaganda. If you are a Trump supporter, which what they really mean is not really Trump, they mean if you're trying to make America great again and go back to some old path principles, if that's what you're doing, you are part of a cult. Now there's a certain gullible type of person that this hurts. They're afraid of this. They shake, and they'll go and vote Democrat. Say, I'm not going to be in a cult. Not realizing, now you're in a cult. A baby murder cult. A communist cult that's trying to overthrow this country. San Diego Union Tribune, and the pressing question will be about the state of conspiratorial, authoritarian, anti-democratic conservatism in America. Whoa, wait a minute. Conservatism is authoritarian, anti-democratic? You go on the street and say, what do you think about Baptists? Oh, they're just evil people. They're trying to take away our liberties. Really? You know that's where you got your liberties? You don't know that, do you? Let me ask you a question. What do you think about conservative politics? Fascist. I've actually watched people take a microphone and say, what does that word even mean? Like, I don't know. I don't think I know what it means. They just tell me that if you're conservative, you're fascist. So in one sense, you think it means totalitarian. Have you ever known a dictator rise to power and say, I want everybody to have a gun? When dictators rise to power, they take away your guns. You got this thing upside down. Whoever's trying to take away your guns is the person that's against your liberty. Not to mention your guns, but your ability to speak. Here's another one. Trump has created a cult, North Carolina's Governor Cooper says in campaigning for Democratic governors. Oh, that's a scary word. You better vote Democrat. You better vote Democrat. Biden showed up with dark propaganda warnings. If you vote Republican, you're going to destroy democracy. You're going to show that you're an extremist. You're anti-woman. You're violent. Many people just mocked it, but a lot of people got scared. They said, I don't want to be a part of a cult. I don't want to be extremist. I don't want to be against women. He called former President Donald Trump's Republican followers a cult and said the majority of the Republican Party supported an autocracy. Wow, an autocracy that wants to give you your guns. Milwaukee Independent says our false messiah, why Trump's cult of personality is danger to both America and democracy. I'm trying to let you see something right now. I want to show you why the midterms didn't do as well as many Republicans hoped they. Now, I saw all this. I saw it happening. But again, what I said is this isn't going to work this time. But I forgot one thing. I'll explain that to you in a minute. I knew with some it would work. Think Mao's China and Stalin's Russia, USSR, and Hitler's Germany, and Kim's North Korea. Yeah, all these people took away your guns. These are the people that would say, you are not allowed to have disinformation. You are guilty of disinformation. You're guilty of having a gun. To prison you go. To death you go. Whoever tries to shut down your freedom of speech and take away your gun, that's the danger, my friend. We see how destructive such personality cults can be with the deaths around Jim Jones's Jonestown and David Koresh's Branch Davidians and Charles Manson's family. I wrote a book about cults, and I want to tell you something. Every single one of them says you cannot take the Bible literally. Jim Jones stood before his church, took a King James Bible, and threw it across the floor and looked everybody in the eye and says, we will not be obeying that book anymore. You understand that? You obey me. That's before he went to Guyana. When they finally rescued one of the girls from Guyana, her daddy got her and says, you know, we got to help you learn the truth about God. She says, Daddy, we don't believe in God. We're communist. Jim Jones is an atheist. He made us use the King James Bible as toilet paper. That's what we did. We ripped up these pages and used this as toilet paper. Don't you tell me that Jim Jones is an example of conservative Christianity. That's a communist. The people they're bringing up belong to them, not us. This is what Donald Trump aspires to. Oh, so now he's Jim Jones. For example, of the 6 women arrested on January 6 who had also committed crimes before or after the coup attempt, the researchers note all 6 have documented mental health concerns. What are they trying to tell you? Well, I don't know anything about these women, but I'm telling you, they are going to tell you that Trump has mental illness, and anybody that follows Make America Great Again has mental illness. Well, they're going to come out and tell you. This should be no surprise. Donald Trump also has well-documented mental illness. And they list books such as The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 27 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess the president. And it turns out, oh my, listen to this, certain types of mental illness are functionally contagious. This is not just mental illness, it's the kind that can jump on you. Oh, this is horrible. I think I've probably started to catch this. Because it started to make sense, but now I realize I'm starting to pick up this disease. Hey folks, this works. This is propaganda. If you want to keep your gun so you can shoot a rapist who's trying to murder or kill or rape or murder or rape your child, you've got mental illness. We have multiple Republican governors now using the power of law enforced by armed police and courts and prisons. My, what are they doing? To force women to carry unwanted pregnancies to term, an emulation of Trump's misogyny. He hates women. So they're saying they will actually use the law to keep you from murder. Wait a minute, I thought that's what the purpose of government was for. To use the law to keep you from murder. You can't just get out here, get drunk at a bar, and say, now I'm just going to go murder my baby. Not if you're civilized. That baby is a life. But not letting women murder their babies, that's why we're a cult, according to these people. The 918 people who died at Jim Jones' jungle camp in Guyana didn't join the People's Temple because they were suicidal. Jones's own psychosis either infected them or wore them down. Oh my, Trump is Jim Jones. Dr. Bandy X. Lee said the treatment is removal of exposure. Hey, now listen to what these people are saying. They're saying if somebody is cultic and is trying to brainwash you with propaganda, you got to be removed from exposure. I think they're right about that. I just think they're wrong about what the brainwashing is. I think you need to remove your kids from public school. I think you need to move your kids out from under corporate, anywhere where you have the money of these wicked leaders trying to, Soros and all of these people. The treatment is removal of exposure. Why are you allowing your kids to sit before the media and sit before a public education? I tell you what, God help us. So I guess they're saying we got to remove Trump before he infects the whole world. You know what that makes me think? I was almost done with politics, but I'm not a Trump worshiper by any means. He did a lot of things wrong. I tried to do what I could to email whatever secretary and say, dude, quit jumping on these vaccines and things. But hey, listen, he's not a perfect man. And he says if I get in office the second time, I'll be even smarter because I won't surround myself by a bunch of people that are fake. I didn't know what I was doing. Well, if you didn't know what you were doing, you sure got a lot of things done that you said you would do. But what they're saying is this man's dangerous. So what do we got to do? Point out as often and as clearly as possible what a criminal, hustler, con artist, and genuinely damaged person Trump is and put him safely in prison. That's what they're all saying. That's what they're all saying. Jim Banks, Trump, and the GOP cult. They say it's no longer the party of the Bushes. The Republicans have become something totally different. The Sun Sentinel says letters to the editor, GOP cult of big lie election deniers. Well, Hillary Clinton denied an election. I guess she is an election denier too. But no, it only works one way, see. Only works one way. The GOP changed from a political party to a cult, says Chicago Tribune. That's the whole GOP. Cult expert Stephen Hassan sees 95% chance of worsening pro-Trump violence. Well, now we got an expert. Former Mooney turned mind control expert says up to 1/3 of Trump's faithful are ready to support violence. Well, why were you given a Second Amendment? That's just a question nobody's supposed to ask. I'm not for illegal or wicked violence. I'm just saying, why did they, what was the Second Amendment for? In total, as outlined by the House, was it for hunting? Is that all? In total, as outlined by the House Select Committee during their first public hearing on Thursday, the unifying theme so far is that Donald Trump is a criminal mastermind with a remarkable ability to corrupt the people around him by ensnaring them in a web of antisocial, pathological values and behavior. Donald Trump is a political cult leader, an apparent sociopath, and an incipient fascist strongman. A fascist that wants to give you your guns. What a strange fascist. Donald Trump is a political cult leader, an apparent sociopath. Okay, the cult is actually bigger than Donald Trump. Aha! We've always said that. This isn't about Trump. This is a movement bigger than Trump. The movement may outlast him because today's Republican Party is part of an authoritarian cult movement that hates democracy and freedom. You mean it doesn't want to allow a woman to have an abortion? Republicans have wanted to destroy public education for decades. You're right about that. Well, not all Republicans, but at least some of them are starting to understand. It's one of the main reasons why the right wing pushes for homeschooling. You're right about that. There are many veterans in the cult of Trump, and they're trained killers. How do you explain Trump's enduring power? Oh, well, that's easy, says this mind control expert. The biggest single block of true believers are the members of right-wing Christian fundamentalist churches and other groups. They're already in a mind control cult. So what they have done now, they have come out and said, all this stuff about MAGA, all this stuff about Trump, I want you to look at the heart of what's wrong with America. It's the fundamental Baptist churches. It's the fundamental churches in America. See, this has been going on for decades. World leaders all over the place, the Pope, everybody says fundamentalism is the cancer. Fundamentalism. We can't have a one world government with fundamentalism. We must get rid of fundamentalism. This is what this is all about. What is your estimate of the likelihood of Trump's cult members engaging in widespread violence? Oh, 95% chance. Woo, that's a big percentage, isn't it? Says Salon.com. Wow. That's heavy. That is heavy. Oh, wait a minute. Nancy Pelosi says Republican Party has been hijacked by a cult. That was way back in 2021. Do you know, I want to remind you, that there was a time when the Israelites were under bondage to Egypt. Pharaoh controlled everything. And a deliverer rose up. His name was Moses. He had the power of God on him. And because of all the plagues and everything that were happening, Pharaoh wanted to make a deal with Moses. It took a while to get him to that point, but he finally said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. You leave your children with me, and you go out into the wilderness and have church. Do whatever you want. We'll let you go sacrifice and worship and do whatever you want to do out in the desert, but you leave your children with us. Okay, that's a pretty good deal, don't you think? Moses says, nope. Nope. No, you're not going to get our children. We're not giving you your children. Aren't you glad that Christians, to some degree, have finally awakened, to some degree, to where they're saying, you know what, you're not going to get our children anymore. I mean, you've got drag queen, you've got the most horrible, licentious books being given to these second graders. And finally, you've got some ladies and some godly men standing up, some parents across the country, standing before city councils. Sweet people, get your children out of these institutions. Just get out of them. I'm glad you're up there just doing what you can to expose it, but just get out of them. Get out of them. It's time to get out. It's time to get out. Now, what do you mean, Nancy Pelosi? It's been hijacked by a cult. Oh, she will go on to tell you. They're disregarding gun control measures. That's what she said. This is your proof it's a cult. If they weren't a cult, they would allow us to take the guns away. That's what she's saying. Then she said they would not allow us, they would not disrespect a woman's right for abortion. Wow. New Republic says the GOP's cult of election deniers is a growing threat to the nation. They don't just disagree with it, they think it's a threat. Oh, Liz Cheney on the GOP's cult of personality around Trump. Full show. CBS. Tune in. Watch it. A whole bunch of people flock. Not a whole bunch of people, but some people. They want to watch that. Now let's show something else that's coming along beside this to show that we're right back to the 1920s now. Watch this. John Stossel. Very, very powerful presentation. Says, today, fewer Americans say they trust science. They don't trust science because science is increasingly untrustworthy. Science writer Andrew Follett does analyst research for NASA, says the only group that trusts science right now is Democrats. I trust the science, says Kamala Harris. But a lot of what's called science today is just left-wing advocacy. This is very interesting. They go on to present examples. Now I exposed this a year or two ago, the process of how papers are accepted. And it's just, it's insane. Well, now people have realized that, so they're writing fake papers. The most ridiculous, absurd papers you could ever write. That being overweight's good for you. All of these gender things about dogs being raped in a park by other dogs. Just the most insane things you could imagine, and they're getting published. They're getting praised. And they're just sitting around laughing. They're like, look what they're telling us. They accepted our paper in this journal. And not only that, we're published scientists now. And they're like, hey, will you come speak at our organization? And we'll fly you around the world. Will you come speak? This is wonderful scientific paper. It's just crazy. It's just crazy is what it is. It's insanity. And that's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. So COVID began to wake up a lot of people to where they're like, wait a second. Whatever y'all call science is whatever is published. Or whatever you fellas all agree on is science. Missouri and Louisiana are suing the Biden administration right now for this very reason, for what they did during COVID, for what they said was science during COVID. In fact, Biden elected somebody for scientific integrity to guard the science of America and make sure our scientific papers have integrity. And she has been actually blackballed. She has been actually exposed for not having scientific integrity and writing a paper that she totally didn't even write and didn't have any integrity. And it's just ridiculous. You did it, Joe, says Kamala as she congratulates Biden. The president also credited women for showing up to the polls to beat the you-know-what out of Republicans after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. She says women did that. The president says women did that. Women showed up to keep me, and to keep Democrats in office. Harris, meanwhile, claimed that religious people were not going against their faith by being pro-choice. Meanwhile, a trial attorney informs the world, hey, everybody, you need to know this. I was contacted by the Good Info Foundation, and they're doing this to lawyers all over America. They offered me $400 if I will make a video post. However, I must say these things. That January 6th was a criminal conspiracy and Trump and Republicans were responsible. I must frame it as an attack on the country, and I must say that Trump and Republicans paid millions to make January 6th happen. I give you $400 if you as an attorney will say this. You're in a propaganda war. You're in a propaganda war. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. GOP favored by married people, but Dems are strongly supported by unmarried women, exit polls show. I'm telling you, putting aside cheating, putting aside stuffing ballot boxes, putting aside having illegals come over and vote, putting aside having dead people vote, putting aside controlling the machines and controlling vote, putting aside all of that, you're in a propaganda war. And they're saying in this propaganda war, unmarried people, that is unmarried women, are falling for it. But a woman, when she gets married, somehow or another becomes more immune to the propaganda. Hey, that's powerful. That's powerful. National Desk says critics have pointed the finger at Democrats, arguing that they have been seeking to destroy the nuclear family and that without it, childhood development suffers. So what they're saying is this. You're trying to destroy the family because you want single women. You want to keep the women from getting married. Because then you'll have votes. And they'll continue to buy your propaganda. You know what they're saying? They're basically saying many single women cannot think, and they are easily manipulated by our emotional propaganda. All we have to say is Trump hates men. He's trying to take away your liberty, and they'll fall for it. Fox News host Jesse Waters said that Democratic policies are designed to keep women single. 68% of single women voted Democrat just recently. So now they're waking up. They're realizing, you know what? Wait a second here. Who's buying the propaganda? Single women. But all of their policies are designed to keep them single. So they'll continue to have this. They got to have an open border, bring them over, and then they got to have women staying single so they can manipulate them. That's it. That's it. They're also teaching our children in schools. So you have hardcore Democrat females in school with your kids for 8 hours a day. You think it's just evolution. Now it's like, hey, you want to see the drag queen come in and dance for you? So there's a brainwashing pipeline that runs through women and children, and it's starting to show up on Election Day. No, my friend, it was showing up on Election Day back in 1930. Now it's on steroids. I'm glad people finally woke up. But you're 100 years too late on this thing. I'm showing you how America lost its greatness. The Republican Party is the party of the married, says Brad Wilcox. Prior to 1950, nearly 80% of households consisted of married couples. But married people became the minority in 2010. Wow. Critics are saying that Democrats are seeking to destroy the nuclear family. Victory for Team Normal, says Liz Cheney. Why do you think the Republicans didn't do as good as they thought they would do? Republican governor of New Hampshire, I said Republican governor of New Hampshire says it's because of abortion. We're turning people off with that abortion stuff. Do you hear what the Republican governor just said? You're turning these single women off. Quit talking about abortion. Quit talking about baby murder. Those single women don't like it. You might make them mad, and they're not going to vote for us anymore. As Tucker says, the Dems largely control the media machine. But look what happened. Look what happened. Vance, who just won Ohio, supposedly endorsed by Trump, when he got on the microphone to give his victory speech, he says, I will now go to the Senate to fight for single moms. Why did you say that? Well, why did you say that? Do you mean widows? By all means, fight for them, whatever you mean by fight for them. Do you mean women who have been abandoned by adulterers? What do you mean you're going to fight for single moms? Moms that have left their husbands? And the government says, we'll support you and help you leave your husband? What business does the government have entering into something like that? These are the women that are destroying this country. Why are you trying to help them? There's some godly women that have been mistreated. But are you telling me that makes up the large majority of single women out there? No. What you see now is they can have a clown. It doesn't matter who, as long as it's not a Trump supporter. That's how powerful this propaganda is. The person doesn't have to even be able to talk. He doesn't have to be coherent. There it is, Micah 2. If a man walking in the spirit and falsehood do lie, saying, I will prophesy unto thee of wine and of strong drink, he shall even be the prophet of this people. What they're saying is, a prophet or even a politician, all he's got to do is get up and say, let's everybody go get drunk. They're like, woo, we love you, we love you, we love you, we hate Trump, we're going to elect you. If there's any good news, white suburban women shifted right just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'll close with two verses. Hebrews 12. We're going to sum it all up right now. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. There was a propaganda machine that came against Jesus with Satan in control of it. You know what Jesus did? He despised it. Basically saying, I don't care what you call me. I don't care what you call me. It's not going to move me. I care what the Father thinks. And that's what you have to do as a Christian. That's what you have to do as a Christian. Our Lord said, Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted they the prophets which were before you. I believe you got to beware of this powerful propaganda. I believe you have to beware of how they control the media and control the public schools. I believe as single women, you ought to stick close to your father, your church, and godly men in your life. Let the younger women, if you're called to marriage, get married, bear children, guide the house. Give none occasion for the adversary to speak reproachfully. Dear Holy Father, I do come to you right now. And Lord, maybe you'll give us a refreshment. Maybe you will give us a reprieve. I thank you for what we have left of the liberties that have been given to us by our forefathers. And of course by you, Lord. We thank you for our preserved, perfect Bible. We thank you for the truth of the church. Lord, we ask that you will help us stand against the most insane, maddening, unreasonable policies that Christians are standing for, whether in the church or in politics, so-called Christians. Help us expose them, Lord, with the light of reason and ultimately with your perfect Bible and truth. And God, we just pray this open door, you'd open even more doors. But leave a door of liberty open for us to preach, to speak. Let many wake up, Lord. But we have some evil people in this nation that are barbarians, that are savages, that want to harvest organs before people are even dead, that want to kill little babies, that want to promote drag queens, the most vilest, lewd, lascivious disgrace in front of little children. God, can we dwell with these people? We pray that their eyes would open, Lord, that you would save them, deliver them from their darkness. Let us witness to many. Now let us shine your light and be bold and not be afraid of the ridicule. In Jesus' name, amen.